In the news tonight, Israel denies a work permit to a Human Rights Watch researcher, accusing the organization of propaganda, and the organization describes the move as unprecedented. As the Syria peace talks convene in Geneva, UN health coordinators say it is a serious mistake not to include access to humanitarian aid and healthcare to the meeting agenda. And Iraqi security forces advanced deeper into the western half of Mosul as a rapid response force began clearing the recaptured airport of roadside bombs and booby traps left by Daesh. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. A Jordanian F-16 taking part in the Saudi-led coalition operations in Yemen crashed in Saudi Arabia. An army spokesman said the pilot, First Lieutenant Adnan Naim Nabbas, managed to eject and escape safely with no injuries. The spokesman added that Nabbas was to be brought back home today in coordination with the Royal Saudi Air Force. We wish him a safe trip back home. Israel has denied a work permit to a Human Rights Watch researcher, accusing the organization of doing the work of Palestinian propagandists. The move, however, was described by the US-based organization as unprecedented and an ominous turn. The news emerged as Israel faced criticism from the UN Human Rights Council over an 18-month jail sentence handed to an Israeli soldier who shot an incapacitated Palestinian in the head. The UN body said the sentence was excessively lenient and unacceptable, given that it contradicts other sentences handed down by other Israeli courts for less serious offenses, such as 3 years imprisonment of Palestinian children for throwing stones at cars. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is due to address the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva on Monday at the start of its main annual session.
For other less serious offenses. More than 200 Palestinians have been killed since the most recent upsurge in violence began in the West Bank in September 2015. Sergeant Azaria is the only member of the Israeli security forces to have been brought to trial for such a killing. While the prosecution and conviction are very welcome steps towards accountability, the punishment, which is excessively lenient, is difficult to reconcile with the intentional killing of an unarmed and prone individual. This is a long-standing issue with Israel, and we've been in touch with the Israeli authorities on this issue multiple times over the years. This is a chronic culture of impunity that we're talking about. This is not one individual case. In this case, there actually was a prosecution and a conviction, which is more than we've seen in any of the other cases.
Chief government negotiator at Syria peace talks in Geneva, Bashar Jafari, said he received a paper from UN mediator Staffan de Mistura and said he would study it. Jafari and the Syrian government delegation met earlier with de Mistura to establish a procedure for the intra-Syrian negotiations. The government and opposition came face to face at the UN for the first time in 3 years yesterday to hear mediator de Mistura urge them to cooperate. As Jafari told reporters, he would inform de Mistura about the government position vis-à-vis the paper. The UN Special Envoy also met with the Syrian opposition delegation led by Nasr al-Hariri. De Mistura was holding bilateral meetings with the delegations to establish a plan for this round of negotiations that could run into early next month. At the last Geneva talks 10 months ago, de Mistura had to shuttle between the parties who never met in the same room, leading to slow progress in the negotiations that were suspended as the war escalated. In Turkey, meanwhile, United Nations health officials say it is a serious mistake not to include access to humanitarian aid and healthcare to ongoing international talks on Syria. They insist those issues must be given a first priority. The United Nations estimates 13.5 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance in Syria, including 4.9 million living in besieged and hard-to-reach areas. The world body said it would need a total of $8 billion this year to provide life-saving assistance to millions of Syrians inside their shattered homeland and to refugees and their host communities in neighboring countries. The UN also says the main difficulty in delivering assistance is getting permission for trucks, and that has been inconsistent.
3 million children in Syria, they have not seen peace. They are living in environments of conflict, and this has a very negative impact on their future health. So all these peace talks and negotiations should include humanitarian aid, healthcare, and that healthcare providers should be protected.
So whatever access we had was still very little compared to the overall need. And in the month of January and February, we've seen that level drop a little bit more. So we're very concerned about these populations now. And we would, every month we ask for permission, and we have a plan outlined for all these areas, and we would like to implement that on a regular basis.
As the Syrian government and opposition delegations meet in Geneva for peace talks, violence continues on the ground in Syria. A bomb attack claimed the lives of over 50 people in Al-Bab near the Syrian-Turkish border. The death toll has risen since initial reports put the number of victims at 35. Here's more.
Scores of injured people were taken to hospital in the Turkish town of Kilis today after a Daesh bomb attack in Al-Bab in Syria. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the blast hit a security checkpoint controlled by rebels fighting under the Free Syrian Army banner in the village of Susyan, 8 kilometers northwest of Al-Bab, killing 42 people, including 35 civilians. Yesterday, the Turkey-backed rebels drove the terrorists from Al-Bab and 2 smaller towns nearby after weeks of street fighting, thus depriving the group of their last big possession in northwest Syria. Daesh claimed responsibility for the attack on a social media website, where they also acknowledged losing control of Al-Bab. Nancy Khair for the news at 10.
Over to Iraq, and the US-backed security forces are advancing deeper into the western half of Mosul after launching attacks on several fronts towards Daesh's last main stronghold in the city. Counter-terrorism forces managed to fully control the Ghazlani army base, pushing deeper towards the southwestern districts of Tell al-Rumman and Al-Ma'mun. Yesterday, troops recaptured Mosul airport, an important victory in the battle to end the terrorist control of territory in Iraq. Federal police and an elite interior ministry unit known as Rapid Response are clearing the airport of roadside bombs and booby traps left by Daesh. The Iraqi army plans to repair the airport and use it as a base from which to drive the terrorist group from Mosul's western districts, where about 750,000 people are believed to be trapped. British Prime Minister Theresa May's Conservative Party secured a landmark victory in a parliamentary by-election today. The Conservatives captured the northwestern England seat of Copeland that Labour have held since 1935. The win is a strong indicator of May's tightening grip on political power following the Brexit vote. It is also an evidence that her strategy of pursuing a clean break with the EU has stemmed rising right-wing populism.
I'm absolutely delighted to be able to be here in Millom with the new Member of Parliament for Copeland, Trudy Harris. This is an astounding victory for the Conservative Party, but also for the people of Copeland. You know, Labour have held this seat since the 1930s. A party in government hasn't won a by-election from the opposition, in a seat held by the opposition, for 35 years. The sea around the Philippines has produced nightmarish sea creatures in recent days, with 2 bizarre carcasses washing ashore. The unidentified creature, which measured 4.5 meters in length and covered in white hair, was washed up on one of the Dinagat Islands in the Philippines. The Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources believe the carcass remains could be those of a sea cow. Samples have been sent to the lab to determine the species and its cause of death.
In total, the creature has a length of 6.3 meters, excluding the tail, which is missing, and a total width of 2 meters from the dorsal to pectoral fin. The carcass was already significantly decomposed when surprised locals discovered it on Wednesday. In tonight's fitness and well-being section, we highlight climbing, a sport that we as babies practiced by instinct even before we attempted our first steps. Due to rising popularity globally, climbing will be officially approved as an Olympic sport by 2020. In Jordan, the first climbing event using professional gear was in the 80s by a British mission in Wadi Rum. It was not until 2010 when the first indoor climbing facility in Jordan and the Middle East opened in Amman, advancing the sport in the country and the region. 1 year later, Jordan was host to the International Indoor Climbing World Cup, the first such event in the Middle East. Dan Abu Sham has more on this sport.
Intimidated? Once a sport for the adrenaline junkies practiced in and outdoors, rock climbing broke into the mainstream in recent years. Besides the physical challenge of an aerobic workout, building upper body strength and maintaining cardiovascular fitness, it is also a mental workout, especially as one is required to figure out the best way up the wall. You can start your climbing journey with bouldering if you're not too keen on heights. Using no ropes, you climb at a height of no more than 4 meters. Crash pads are there to protect the fall. Mental work is needed to solve bouldering routes, which are actually called problems. This climbing instructor says climbing develops problem-solving skills.
Sometimes you need to figure out where are you going to step or which hold you have to hold before moving on to the next one. So for example, if you hold a hold in the wrong hand, then you might be stuck to reach to another place. Or if your feet are not moving correctly, then you're not balanced, then you're going to lose lots of energy and pretty quickly. So it has a lot of technique in it. You have to practice and kind of learn through it. This is the cool thing, that it's a learning process and there is no end.
New climbers typically start with top rope climbing style. In this case, you are securely attached to a rope that is anchored at the top of the climb and protected by a belayer at the foot of the climb. Any falls are usually short and safe with an attentive belayer. Once you've gained the skill and experience, you move into lead climbing, which is less restricted than top climbing. You start with the rope at the bottom of the climb and clip as you go up. You're leading the climb as there are no set-up ropes. Here, a belayer's presence is also a must. The challenge of indoor climbing is constant with continuous route setting, while outdoor climbing is a different ballgame, packaged in its connectedness with nature.
Climbing to me is my passion, actually. I think I got into it from day one. And 7 years later, I'm still climbing on a regular basis. It's a way for me to challenge myself. It's a constant challenge, actually. It's also a way to reconnect with nature.
For Abdul Qadir, his passion for climbing enriched his life.
This enabled me to meet very unique, special people that you want to be more friends with. And also, by climbing outdoors, you really learn about what your country can offer for you. A lot of things that are hidden in this country that you will be surprised and you be happy to discover and just visit every week. Plus, for me, it's my passion to travel. It enabled me to travel abroad.
If you want to go beyond a physical and mental challenge, learn life skills, be part of a like-minded community, and while at it, reconnect with nature and get to know the natural treasures of your country and other places, then you have found your sport. If you want to push your limits, go out of your comfort zone and enrich your life, get over your fear of heights if you have it and give it a try. Rock climbing is a well-rounded sport that also connects you to the magnificence of nature. What are you waiting for? This is Dana Abu Sham for the News at 10.
2 days until the Academy Awards to recognize the best films, actors and crews, but also when eyes will be on the red carpet for the best dressed stars of the night. Who Are You Wearing has become part of the ritual. Stylists predict this year's red carpet will be lively, featuring a variety of trends with lots of metallics, lots of reds and whites. And of course, celebrities will be wearing dresses from luxury goods from high-end designers like Marquisa, Armani Privé, Vera Wang, among others. But no matter what their choice is, the main goal will be joy. The fashion fun will take place as the stars hit the red carpet at the Oscars on Sunday. We stay with fashion and the Milan Autumn-Winter 2017-2018 Fashion Week. Italian fashion house Prada brought to the catwalk soft and strong designs in an attempt to define the role of women in society. Prada models paraded down the catwalk wearing corduroy pants, biker berets and long velvet skirts. Woolen caps, rough brown pantsuits and duffel coats were also some of the highlights of the show. The models also slipped into sequined colored designs decorated with delicate feathers, flowers and fringes or knee-length mermaid tail skirts. In another show, Moschino unveiled its autumn-winter collection using everything for its designs, including upholstery, fabric, shower curtains, or even rubbish from black waste bags for its dresses. Models wore beige clothes, trench coats, and dresses that resembled moving material and boxes. The show continued with multicolored looks of bright patterns inspired by the street fashion of the 80s. To accessorize, models wore baseball caps, backpacks, and wide sunglasses. Milan Fashion Week runs until the 27th, with major brands Versace, Missoni, and Dolce & Gabbana still to unveil their designs. In the Abu Dhabi Tour, Germany's Marcel Kittel snatched state victory for Australia's Caleb Ewan, reaching first the finish line of Stage 2. Overall leader Mark Cavendish of Great Britain finished third to keep the red jersey and a 4-second advantage over Kittel, who was second in the general classification. The Abu Dhabi Tour now goes into the hills for Stage 3 before ending with another sprint stage at the Yas Marina Motor Racing Track on Sunday.
Join us there and greet these riders. What an incredible finish. Khalev thought he had it. Kicks out. Today's award to Marcel Kittel.
Premier League champions Leicester City have sacked Italian manager Claudio Ranieri. Ranieri, whose side are currently a point and a place above the relegation zone, leaves less than a year after clinching a remarkable title triumph. Following the announcement, Leicester have begun their search for a new manager. Assistant manager Craig Shakespeare and Mike Stowell will take interim charge of the team ahead of Monday's clash with Liverpool. But the club is keen to make a swift appointment to give the new manager time to lead their survival bid. Former Leicester City player Roberto Mancini is the early favourite to replace Ranieri. And Dutchman Frank de Boer is also in the running.
Why not?
Be a new champ.
Yeah.
How enjoyable.
It was a great match.
And finally, it continues to be cold in most regions for the rest of tonight, with light variable winds. Tomorrow, pleasant weather is in the forecast as temperatures rise to a high of 19 degrees Celsius in Amman, with southeasterly moderate winds. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect a warm day tomorrow with northerly moderate winds and calm seas. Those are the temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. Israel denies a work permit to a Human Rights Watch researcher, accusing the organization of propaganda, and the organization describes the move as unprecedented. As the Syria peace talks convene in Geneva, UN health coordinators say it is a serious mistake not to include access to humanitarian aid and healthcare to the meeting agenda. And Iraqi security forces advance deeper into the western half of Mosul as a rapid response force begin clearing the recaptured airport of roadside bombs and booby traps left by Daesh. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Ali Atqan. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.